what leaders really do, and that is they lead people through successful change. In fact, if you think about it for a moment, that's why you have leaders. You have leaders to help you do the difficult things of life. I mean, if everything was easy and there was a fast answer for everything in your life and my life, maybe we wouldn't even need leaders in our life. But because life is uphill and because times are difficult and because adversity happens, that's why leaders are needed. In fact, I tell leaders all the time, during the most difficult times, be happy because that's why you're a leader. Do your best to help people go to that next level. I did a lecture recently entitled U-Turn Leadership. You know, we go down the road and all of a sudden we realize we're going the wrong direction, so we make a U-turn. And in this lecture that I taught on U-Turn Leadership, basically I said that you prove the strength of your leadership, the capability of your leadership by being able to U-turn an organization around. And what I mean by that is if something happens that's pretty adverse or difficult and the organization it's kind of going down, if leaders step in and begin to slow that downturn and eventually they kind of even it out and then they start to get the organization going the right way and start to building it and growing it and they start going to the top again. That's a U-turn leader. And the best leaders are not leaders who lead during easy times. I mean, honestly, I think almost anybody can lead during easy times, but leading during difficult times takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of thought. It takes a huge amount of teamwork. I mean, you really have to bring your team together because at that moment you have to have truly all hands on deck. And so when I think of leading through change, you know, the first thing I think about is that when you lead through change, people look back at it and they say, wow, that was growth. We really grew during that time. And if you don't lead well during change, you kind of substitute the word growth for grief. And we say, oh my gosh, that really wasn't very good. So let me give you some comments on change because I deal with a lot of organizations that are going through change, and I try to help them kind of work their way through that process. And they're just some very simple comments that I want to make. And when I make them, you're going to say, well, yeah, that's very true. You're going to identify with them immediately. But hopefully, not only will you say, yeah, I got that. I think that's very true. Hopefully, it will help you to, within your own leadership and idea, to be able to respond in an incredible way to really, lead your amazing work even better than you have in the past. So just let me give a few comments on change. Number one is, first of all, few people like it. If you go out and just talk to people about, do you like to change? Most people say, no, not really. I saw a cartoon one time said, the guy is asking, how many of you would like to see change in the world? And everybody raised their hand. And then the guy says, well, how many of you would like to be the change that's needed to make our world better? And of course, nobody raises their hand. It's kind of like, I really want you to change, okay? And so start changing. I'm not sure I'm going to make those changes. In fact, one of the things that's interesting in my leadership years that I discovered was that when I used to teach leadership, I would say something like this, that leaders really love change, and then followers didn't. It was kind of like leaders were pioneers, and they were, they were going into unknown territory and saying to the rest of the team, "Come on, follow me," and the followers were saying, "No, I don't want to go." But I came to the conclusion after several years of teaching leaders in leadership that leaders do not necessarily like change either, unless it's their idea. Now, when it's the leader's idea, then all of a sudden he or she is saying, "Okay, gang, let's make the changes that we need to make." But regardless, whether you're leading, supporting on staff, regardless of what position you have in many ways a leadership position. And when we think of change, it's just uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. It's not easy for people to make. Let me illustrate that with you now. In fact, I'm going to ask you to do what I do. Just do me a favor. Just cross your arms like I have mine. You cross your arms probably every day, okay? You've probably done this thousands of times. And now every one of us, we have our arms crossed. And let me just tell you what I know about what we're doing. When I cross my arms to kind of visually show you what I wanted you to do, I crossed my arms the same way this time that I do every time. I've done this thousands of times, and when I cross my arms, I always cross them like this, every time. And so do you, by the way. So what I want you to do, there's two ways to cross your arms, but we only do it one way. So let's just have some fun for a moment. Just cross your arms the other way just for a moment. And the moment that you cross your arms this way, it feels totally uncomfortable. Now, why does it feel uncomfortable? Does it feel uncomfortable because it's wrong? No. It feels uncomfortable because we've never done it this way before. It's not an issue of right or wrong. It's an issue of we get into a familiar pattern. It's called a habit. And we just basically do things the same way. And we love that because what we really like is automatic. There's something wonderful about not having to think. There's something about going through your day kind of like in automatic, and you just, through habit, do these several things, and you kind of finish your day. And sometimes for people, 80% of their day is automatic. And automatic is really good for efficiency. There's a lot of wonderful things about automatic, but automatic is not good when it comes to changing or thinking of a better way to do something or looking around and say there has to be another answer. But when we ask people to change, go back to that arm for a moment. When we ask people to change, it's uncomfortable to them. Let me do one more exercise quickly with you. Just fold your hands like I'm doing here with you right now, okay? Okay. Now, as we are folding our hands, again, we have done this thousands of times. Let me tell you what I know about you and me. Every time I fold my hands, clasp them like this, I do it the same way. Every time I put these fingers together just like this. Now, there's another way for me to clasp my hands. I mean, this isn't the only way to do it. If I wanted to, in fact, let's do it. Let's just go over one finger at a time. And now clasp your hands. Now, the moment that you do this, it's uncomfortable. It's almost like, oh my gosh, let's get back to the right way. And the right way to us is the way we've always done things, or the way that is automatic or comfortable in our life. Now, I use this visual kind of on hands illustration, literally, to help you understand that's what happens with people and change. It's just uncomfortable. And most people do not want to continue to be uncomfortable. And so we would rather kind of almost have old problems that we're comfortable with than to go in and find new solutions that in territory where we've never been before. The second comment I want to make about change is that it happens, whether you like it or not. I love the people who basically say, well, I'm not going to change. Well, it's almost like if I say I'm not going to change, that everything's going to stay the same around me. And that's just impossible. I love the story of a man up in New Hampshire. I heard this story a couple years ago, and he was 100 years old. And so one of the local town reporters went out to his farm to interview him and talk to him about 100 years. And so the interview started by the reporter looking at him, he said, I bet you've seen a lot of changes in your lifetime, haven't you? And the old man, he crosses his arm on the porch. He said, yep. He said, I have. He said, I've been against every one of them. And when I hear that little kind of humorous story, I think, my gosh, this is so true with so many. Yeah, I've seen the changes, and I've been against every one of them. Now, here's what I know, and this is where we're starting to get into what I would call the important part of the teaching. Change requires energy. Anytime you get out of automatic, you have to up your energy level. One of the things we like about automatic is we just by habit can do certain things. And so therefore, we don't have to expend mental energy, much physical energy. We've kind of got it down. So for us to change, it requires energy. So what I want you to know that if change requires energy, the question is, how are we going to channel that energy? Is it going to be positive or is it going to be negative? Because a lot of times change requires a lot of negative energy when people are fighting or saying, "No, I don't want to do that," or "I'm against that," or "Hey, I've seen a lot of changes. I'm against all of them." So the energy that change requires can either be positive or negative. And the secret, of course, obviously, is to not fight yesterday, the old ways, but to engage all of your energy in where you are and what you need to accomplish now and have what I call positive forward energy. And I think that is really very, very important because the tendency is, one of the tendencies I found is during adversity and difficult times, what people really want to do is just hold. They don't want to go forward. They don't want to even go backward. It's almost like if I could just stand still and hold my breath. And that's kind of a natural response when adversity hits us. I can still remember way back in 9/11, 20 years ago. I can still remember I had a company that helped nonprofits raise money. And every day of the year, we would sign a contract with some nonprofit to help them raise some money for the dreams that they had. It was a kind of a rewarding business. When 9/11 hit, and America just was paralyzed. And from September 11 to the end of the year, we never signed another contract, not one. Everybody was just saying, "Oh, I got to wait. I got to see what happened." When COVID hit, oh my gosh, well, let's just hold still. And how long is this going to last? And we just, when you're uncertain and when you have a lot of questions, the tendency is it's almost like if we stand still and kind of don't breathe, don't move, then it's kind of like, oh my gosh, I think we're going to be okay. Okay, there's another comment I want to make about change, and this comment is a leader's comment. This is kind of really down this leadership lane that I want to take you. There are 4 times I've discovered as a leader, there are 4 times when people change. And leaders know this because leaders are change agents. And so they look for these tides. They look for these momentum times where it's kind of obvious that they can change. And the first one is people change when they hurt enough that they have to. Sometimes we are forced to change. I mean, we have just, and it can be something very difficult. I mean, it could be the death of a family member. It can be an adversity such as COVID. So many really hard things happen until we look at ourselves and we say, well, okay, I've got to make a change. I really do. In fact, during the first part of COVID, I would inform leaders that people were so numb that if they wanted to make changes, it was a great time to make it because people were so hurting that, you know what I mean? They would embrace any change basically they saw, especially if they thought it would in any small way help them. So people change when they hurt enough they have to. They change also, and by the way, that's not the most positive way to change because sometimes that change is almost too late. We've probably waited longer than we should have to make. We would like to be in front of change, not dragging and being drugged into change, that's for sure. People change, secondly, when they see enough that they're inspired to. In other words, this is a great way to have change where people see, during adverse times, they see a leader that's leading well. I think right now, as I think of the leader of Ukraine and what they're going through, of course, with the incredible adverse situations with the war with Russia. And I just have to think, every day I think about this leader of Ukraine and how he has to be the most inspirational visual figure in that country by his strength and by his resolve and by his commitment to care and help the people and by his continual leadership decisions that he's making that's allowing the people to take a stand. There's just sometimes, hopefully an idea, hopefully in your organization, you're seeing some people in the midst of your change right now that they just inspire you. And they maybe don't even understand the change well, but they're in. They're all in. They're committed. They're settled, and they're saying this is what we're going to do. And it's wonderful when you see somebody that is doing what they should do during a crisis, and you look at them and say, "Wow, I want to be just like that." They inspire me to make the changes I need to make because I'm watching them make those changes themselves. Thirdly, people make changes when they learn enough that they want to. Sometimes in our difficult times, we just find a better way. We find a better answer. We find another answer. And that's one of the reasons we need to be out of automatic. And that's one of the reasons change is so important. It kind of moves us. And I made a statement during COVID, and that is everything that you want or need, but you don't have, okay? You want it or you need it in your life, but you don't have it. Everything that you want or need, but you don't have, is outside of your comfort zone. If it was in our comfort zone, we would have gotten it because it's comfortable. But there are things that we don't have. There are some things that we really need, but we don't have. But we never have had them because they're outside of our comfort zone. And so people change when all of a sudden they learn. They say, oh, I didn't realize that there was a better way. I had no idea. I see it. Oh, my gosh. Wow. Why wasn't I doing this a while ago? So people make changes when they learn enough that kind of makes them want to make the changes. And then finally, people, they make changes when they receive enough that they're able to make those changes. And receiving enough could be support, encouragement. Since I used the illustration a moment ago, go back to Ukraine. What's the president of Ukraine continually asking our country and other countries? Give me some more supplies. If you'll give me enough weapons, I can withstand this. I can hold this country. Well, what's he waiting? He said, if you'll just give me enough resources that I need, I'll be able to make this change. So those are 4 times, that people make changes. And as leaders, we have to look for those 4 times. Is there a hurting issue? Are they seeing and getting inspired? Are they learning? Are we giving them something that helps them to receive what they need to make those changes? And because we're change agents, we're trying to always look at these times and not miss them when they come. That's for sure. Another comment about change is the fact that we have to face reality. We just have to face reality. Max Dupree says the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. So in IDEA and in every other organization, there has to be leadership who says, okay, this is where we are. This is where we need to go. These are the changes we need to make to get there. And, reality just has to become, it becomes really the foundation for change. Reality becomes not only the foundation for change, it becomes the foundation for the growth of your organization. Somebody told me this recently. I thought it was kind of humorous. It said the definition of a crisis is when you cannot say, let's forget the whole thing. Well, if you can say, let's forget the whole thing, that's not a crisis. It's when you can't say, let's forget the whole thing because the whole thing is here. And I've got to deal with the whole thing because it's right before me. Now, if I've got to do that, I've got to face reality. And by the way, the moment I face reality, I then begin to really have a foundation to really build my organization off of. Several years ago, I wrote a book on the 17 laws of teamwork. And one of my favorite laws is the law of the scoreboard. And the law of the scoreboard just simply says, the team can make adjustments when it knows where it stands. In other words, the value of the scoreboard at any time is not only to tell the fans how the game is going, but it's to help the coaches and the leaders of the team. Because on that scoreboard, pretty much they have very realistic viewpoint of where the team is. Are we ahead? Are we behind? Is it time to substitute? How many fouls does a player have on them? Basically, when we can see that scoreboard and we have a reality check, it allows us to make the adjustments we need. We make our adjustments off what is real. In fact, have you ever noticed in any stadium or any coliseum, the scoreboard is always extremely visible? I mean, you don't have to leave the gym and go down the side hall and enter the corner lobby to look at the score. The score's right in front of everybody. Why? Because it's a realistic reminder at any time in the game exactly where you are and what you need to do to keep winning or to or to come back. And so there's a real sense of reality that is just very, very important that has to happen in change. And leaders, they're the ones who help us to have the reality. They're the ones who give us the clear picture, and the clear picture really is how we base all decisions on what we're going to do in the future. The reality is what we base our decisions off, not what we would wish would have happened, or we question what happened, or why did it happen, or I think this could happen. No, it has to be, you start with reality and then you build your organization. Another thought, as we're talking about how leaders help people through change, is to lead well and to help people through change, you have to practice what I call a positive life stance. And I really love that phrase, positive life stance, because there's something really solid about having a life stance that's positive. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. You see, during difficult times, during adversity, when everything is kind of uphill, attitude is the difference maker. Attitude isn't everything. It never has been. Attitude doesn't replace. If you have a great attitude but you're incompetent, the good news is you're positive. The bad news is you're incompetent. So attitude doesn't replace incompetence. I don't think attitude replaces experience. So attitude, when somebody says, well, attitude's everything, and I said, no, it's not everything. But attitude is the most important thing. If somebody said, what's the most important thing that needs to happen in the idea as you go through the changes that you're going through right now and you're getting ready to go to a greater future than you've ever had before, I would say to you without any question, attitude is essential. And that attitude comes out of what I call that positive life stance. So let me kind of define it for you. A positive life stance is about having daily attitudes. It's about the attitude I have of myself every day. It's about the expectations I make of myself and others every day. And it's all about how I see things. How we view things is how we do things. And a positive life stance is I view things and I view people through positivity, just like a negative life stance or negative viewpoint is I see things through a more of a difficult, negative, dark environment. So if our attitude is continually positive, this is a life stance. This isn't like I had a positive attitude for an hour. This is who I am day in, day out. This is a lifestyle, okay? This life stance is a lifestyle. If I have a positive lifestyle, then basically I'm going to view everything in a positive way. Just as if I have a negative life stance or lifestyle, I'm going to view things from a negative standpoint. So several years ago, I built my positive life stance from the statements I'm going to give you right now. These statements really work. I will promise you, if you'll just kind of follow the 5 things I share with you right now, you can develop a positive life stance. In fact, I think what I'm going to give you right now is a case for every person to develop a positive life stance in their life. Here we go. Here's what I know. Number one, I know that life is filled with good and it's filled with bad. Every life, your life, my life. I have some good in my life. I've got some bad in my life. I have some good days. I've got some bad days. I got some things that just are wonderful and delightful. And I have some things that are just ugly and appalling. Okay. So every day it is filled with good and bad. It's a mixture. It's not like, oh, my day was all good or my day was all bad. Okay. The second thing I know in this positive life stance is that some of the good and some of the bad I can't control. It's just life. Now, this is very important because there are some people who think that somehow they can control everything that happens. You see, I can't control what happens to me. I can only control what happens in me, okay? So there's stuff that happens, just bad stuff that happens to me. It wasn't my fault. I didn't bring it on. But because life has some bad to it, I mean, I have some things that happen to me that are very difficult. I didn't bring it about, and I don't control it. And it's the same thing with good. There's some very good things I've had in my life that I didn't bring that about either, and I don't. So what we have to understand. In fact, I had a mentor one time that just shared with me a great. He said, "John, a problem is something that you can work on." He said, there are some things, they're not problems, they're just facts of life. And some of them are good and some are bad, but you know, if it's just a fact of life, no matter what you do, it's still going to happen. It's a fact of life. Well, I think that statement number two, there are some of the good and some of the bad I can't control. It's just life. I think that's where my mentor was. So you and I have good things and bad things come in our life. We didn't bring them and we can't get rid of them. It's just a fact of life. The third statement in the positive life stance is this: some of the good and some of the bad will find me. It just will. No matter how fast I run, some of the bad will find me. And every day, some bad finds me, some good finds me. They just kind of seek you out, okay? And that's just the way it is. Again, I didn't bring it to pass. I didn't go after the good or the bad. I just sometimes, ooh, that wasn't what I wanted. Okay, well, it found me. Oh, wow, that was good. It found me. So some of the good, some of the bad will find me. Now we're coming down to the essence of a positive lifespan. Number four, statement number four. If I have a positive life stance, okay, then the good and the bad will become better. That's a fact. In other words, if I have a positive life stance about good things become great things. If I have a positive life stance even about the bad things that happen in my life, the adversity, the difficulty, the changes that I'm having to make. If I have a positive life stance, guess what? The bad is still not great, but it will be less bad than if I lack a positive life stance. So a positive life stance takes the good and the bad and elevates it and makes it better. It just does. Statement number five, if I have a negative life stance, the good and the bad will become worse. They just will. In other words, I didn't bring everything on that comes to my life, but I do control whether the bad and the good get a little bit better by my attitude or the bad and the good become worse because of my attitude. And a positive life stance understands that regardless of what you're going through, if you think correctly, wow, life will get better. If I could do one thing for people, I mean, honestly, that would bring a great change, I would talk to them about having how they think. The great separator between successful and unsuccessful people is how they think. I wrote a book several years ago. It's a very popular book. It's a $1 million+ seller. And the title of the book is just How Successful People Think. And successful people think differently than unsuccessful people. It's just a fact. It's what is. And because they think differently, they receive different results than unsuccessful people. So if you want to really lead well through change, have a positive life stance. This is just huge. I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to go back in. The comments I've made about change is few people like it. Secondly, change happens whether you like it or not. There are 4 times that people change. We talked about that. Heard enough, see enough, learn enough, receive enough. Number 4, face reality. That's the foundation where we start. Practice a positive life stance. And number 6, be teachable. Be teachable. I saw a sign on a friend's desk one time. I thought it was quite amusing. The sign said, "If I had to do it all over again, I'd get help." I think that sign could be on everybody's desk. If I had to do it all over again, I would get some. I would get some help in my life. So let's talk for a moment about being teachable, because I think this is just absolutely huge. People ask me sometimes, what's the leader's most important quality? And I think for me, the most important quality that I can have as a leader, that you can have as a leader, is humility. And the reason I think humility is so essential is because humility makes me teachable. If I truly am humble, I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to learn from you. I'm ready to ask questions. I have a learning posture in my life that's very receptive to people speaking into my life. And I want to hear what they have to say, because I know that they're going to help me become more self-aware, and they're going to help me learn, and they're just going to improve my life. And I would just say that during adversity, being teachable is so essential. Every month, I've done this for 40 years, I have what I call a learning lunch, where I ask 7 questions of a person. And I sit down, and for an hour and a half, I buy their lunch. I take notes personally. And one of the 7 questions I ask is, what's the most important lesson you ever learned in your life? And I've asked that hundreds of times to hundreds of different people. And there's one thing that every answer has in common from every person that's different. When I ask them what's the most important lesson you've learned in your life, they always talk about a time in their life where they had adversity, difficulty. They talk about a time in their life where they had to make a change maybe that they didn't even want to make, but sometimes they had no choice. Remember, they heard enough, they have to. And one day it really helped me. One day I looked at this and I said, wow, this is huge. That in the adversity and the difficulty, that's where they received the greatest lessons. And then I was reminded of what Bill Gates said. He said, success is a lousy teacher. It makes a person think they can't lose. And I thought how true that is. And so when we are teachable, in fact, one of the things I'm teaching right now, and I want to pass this on to you, and that is that we need to keep failure and success together. The failure and success in our life should be just like this. Sadly, people try to separate success and failure. They say, be successful, and oh my gosh, don't fail. Succeed. Don't fail. Get it right. Don't miss it. And we separate success and failure. And that's not the way life is at all. I've never had anybody say, for 10 years of my life, I had all success. And then for 3 years, I had nothing but failure. No, nothing. The success and failure are in our life almost on a daily deal. We have some wins, we have some losses. We got to keep them together. And the reason that we need to keep success and failure together is if I'm doing really well and I'm on a momentum roll and I'm just succeeding a lot, I need to keep failure right beside that success, because it teaches me humility. And if I'm having a few bad months and I'm failing, I'm kind of in the ditch all the time, I need to keep success right beside me, because success will give me resiliency. You see, failure helps success, and success helps failure. They need each other. They don't work optimally unless they're together. And so I just want to encourage you throughout all the changes that you have, some wins, some losses, some ups and downs, some hills, some valleys. You're going to have that, an idea. We have it in every organization. It's okay. It's okay. Be teachable. When you're failing, say, okay, what do I need to change? And by the way, when you're succeeding, say, okay, what do I need to change? The problem is we try to hold success as it is, which causes us problems in the future, and we try to get rid of all failure, which causes it. We don't need to treat them as either or. They're both and they really work together. Number 7, the 7th comment about change is, okay, this is kind of like Oprah, okay? This is something she would say to you or me, but it's just true, and that is, during the difficulties, adversities, the changes, the things you don't understand, things that you don't like, during that time, just be your best friend. Just be your best friend. You know, the most important person that you and I are ever going to listen to every day is ourselves. What you say to me is important, but it is not as important as what I say to myself. If you say, maybe I didn't do a good job, okay. But if I say I didn't do a good job, that has a whole much more weight. Or if you said, John, you did a great job, and that's nice. But if I say, boy, John, you did a really good job. You did well there. That's even the words that you hear from yourself are the most important words that you're ever going to hear. And so be your best friend. In our companies, I teach what I call the 24-hour rule. The 24-hour rule is just very simple. You know, I tell people when we do something great and we have a great win, let's celebrate for 24 hours, then could we get back to work, okay? And if something is bad happens and, oh my gosh, we got hit in the gut, we didn't see the punch coming, and it was terrible and it's not good, moan. Groan, moan, cry, kick the cat, whatever you do for 24 hours, it's okay. But after 24 hours, get back to work. I have a sign in my office that just simply says, yesterday ended last night. And guess what? It did. Yesterday ended last night. If it was a bad day, it ended last night. If it was a good day, it ended last night. It ended last night. What part of that do we not understand? If it ended last night, we don't do any effective work on what has already ended. We can only do effective work on what is happening right now. So be your best friend. I can still remember as a very, very young leader when my best friend left the organization, left my team that I was on. Wow, that hurt a lot, you know. But when he left the organization, I was my best friend. I can remember there was a leadership position I really wanted when I was in my late 30s, and I didn't get it. Ooh, that stung a little bit, but I was my best friend. I can remember a financial business decision that, you know, cost me $2 million, and wow, that really hurt. But I was my best friend. There's something important about you loving yourself and being your best friend during a crisis that really helps to make a difference in your life. I think it brings a rebirth in your life when you can, during crisis and change, be your best friend. I would like to talk to you out of a book that I wrote a couple years ago, and it's called Leader Shift. And leader shifting is all about becoming agile and nimble. I wrote this book before COVID, but when COVID hit, because there was so much immediate upheaval, it became just really a bestseller because we use the word pivot all the time during COVID, and this is kind of like a pivoting book. How do you change? How do you change successfully? And we all know, including ourselves, that a lot of times we resist change. It's just natural. I think all of us kind of like to get in a comfort zone, kind of like to get into automatic and, okay, now I've got this down, been there, done that type of a mindset. But I'd like to visually illustrate change just for a moment for all of us, and that is, I'm sure you're going to be taking some notes as I teach, but before we take notes, if you just do me a favor and just cross your arms like I have right here. Just everybody just cross their arms, and hey, look at your neighbor, make sure they're crossing their arms just like this. Now, here's what I know. We've done this thousands of times. Every day we cross our arms. But what's interesting is we do it the same way every time. Now, there are two ways to cross your arms. So I have one of the ways right here. But obviously, if I want to, I could cross my arms the other way, but I don't. I always cross my arms this way. And because I've done it this way for years, thousands of times, this is comfortable to me. This is quote the right way to close your arms, just like this. And the moment, now do me a favor, just cross your arms the other way. And the moment you cross your arms the other way, it's uncomfortable. You think, oh my gosh, hey, I got to get back to this way. Change is uncomfortable. Do me one more favor, if you would, just kind of clasp your hands like I'm doing right now, okay? Just like this. Now we've done this hundreds and thousands of times over the years, and here's what I know: we always do it the same way every time. Every time I clasp my hands, I do it this way. Now there are two ways to do it. I could also go move over one finger. In fact, do that with me, okay? Move over one and clasp your hands like that. And the first thing you feel is, oh, it's uncomfortable. It's, well, sure, it's uncomfortable. We've not done it this way. We always do it the same way. Now, the reason I use that illustration is because change is uncomfortable. And whenever we do anything kind of different or new, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't quite feel the same. And what leaders do is leaders understand that change is so essential for the growth of an organization, for the growth of a person. I can still remember, Mark, many, many years ago. I'm talking about I would have been in my early 30s. And I was sitting at a restaurant having lunch with a mentor of mine in Pasadena, California. And that day we were talking, and he took a napkin and he just took up his pen, and on a napkin he wrote these three words: change equals growth. That when you change, it's the only way, the only vehicle, only possibility of bringing growth into your life. Without change, it's impossible to grow. And that day we had a long lunch, and he talked to me about the importance of change and the importance of how personally it would help me to grow to be the person that I would like to become. But he said, John, you're a leader, and in your organization, again, your ability to help people make positive changes in their life is just going to really grow your organization. So that day, he taught me as a leader how to know when people are most prone to change. Because he talked to me about how change is important and timing is important. And he shared with me 4 things that day. I share them with you quickly. This is not the heart of the lesson. I'm just kind of laying the foundation for how we leadership change correctly and do it right. But he said, John, as a leader, he said there are 4 times that people change. He said they change when they hurt enough that they have to. And we've all been there. We've all been in the situation where we really had no choice. We were just, we were on a dead end. And if we didn't change, we were in deep trouble. And by the way, that day he taught me that if you wait until you hurt enough that you have to, in other words, oh my gosh, I have no choice, I got to change. He said, I want you to know that you're always too late. He said, you've got to make change in your life, in your organization, before you hurt so bad you don't have any choice. He said, if you wait that long, you've missed your opportunity. But change happens, when we hurt enough that we have to. He said also, people change when they see enough that they're inspired to. Now, this has a This has a visualness about it, and I like that. He said, John, he said, you be the leader that inspires others to change. And we learn visually. That's how we learn. Stanford research says 89% of everything I know, and probably everything that you know and that you've learned, we learn visually. And so he said, as a leader, you really want to let your people see you change and be positive about it. And it inspires others. It inspires others to change. He said, thirdly, people change when they learn enough that they want to. In other words, it's the old, this is really old, most of you are too young to remember this, but it was the light bulb, and I think it was Ford Motor Company, the light bulb would come on and they would have, it's a new idea. When we learn something that we didn't know, sometimes we say, wow, I didn't realize that. And oh, by the way, I think I need to make a change here. I just found a better route to get to my destination. So people change when they hurt enough they have to, but that's always too late. So you never want to get in that position. When they see enough that they're inspired to, one of the things that great companies do is the leaders pave the way for the change of the people because they model such a good attitude and possibilities of what that change will bring to the organization, that it inspires the people. And then, all of a sudden, I learn a better way. And when I learn a better way, what do? I start thinking that way. That creates change. Fourthly, people change when they receive enough that they're able to. And that receiving enough that a person's able to make a change, that may be resources, that may be a team around you to make that change. In other words, you supplement the things that you need to do with people, time, resources, ideas. But those are the four times that people really changed most naturally. Heard enough they have to, see enough that they're inspired to, they learn enough that they want to, and they receive enough that they're able to. When I teach on leadership, one of the things I teach is the fact that the one thing that all great leaders have in common, and this is really true in your life, Mark, but in the lives of great leaders, great leaders, they see more than others see. In other words, they see a bigger picture, and they see before others see. They not only see a bigger picture, but they just see it quicker than everyone else. And I have taught leadership around the world. We've trained leaders, 6 million leaders in every country of the world, our companies have. And so I understand different countries, different cultures, but the one thing all leaders have in common, regardless of country, culture, time, is that leaders just see more than others see, and they see before others see. Now, when that happens, if I see more than others and I see before others, what that means is that I need to lead the way and bring in about positive change in the organization. If I see the bigger picture and if I see before anyone else, then it's important for me to move. I had a wonderful mentor, John Wooden, who was the great coach for UCLA Bruins. And in fact, we just finished March Madness. My gosh, John Wooden won 10 national championships. And that was a pretty amazing accomplishment. I also know Coach K, and in fact, I went to Cameron, the place where Duke plays basketball, just a couple of weeks ago, and I watched the last game at Cameron with Coach K when they were upset by North Carolina, and then of course they were beat by them in March Madness, but Coach Wooden was a great teacher. I've talked to a lot of the guys who played for him, and they basically say he taught them so much about life that, yes, he taught them how to be a good basketball player, but he was bigger than basketball. Anyway, one of the statements that Coach Wooden would often share with me is he would say, John, when opportunity comes, it's too late to be prepared. He said, some people say, well, if an opportunity ever comes, then I'll prepare. I'll kind of learn how to do it. And he said, no, we ought to be growing and learning in such a way that when opportunity comes, we can seize that moment. How do we leader shift? How do we move to the next great opportunity and do that before others do? I mean, again, the decided advantage. Let me just say one more thing. When I started off, I'm 75. When I started off as a leader, really seeing more than others could see, that was all you had to do. Before, back then, wasn't so essential. It really wasn't. If you could just see the big picture, you're going to be fine. And whenever you wanted to move, you could move. But today, really before has started to have heavier weight than even seeing more, because things move so quickly and timing is so incredible. I was getting ready to speak for a conference a couple of years ago, and I was on a pre-call with the leaders and just trying to know how I could serve them best. And they shared with me that their theme for the conference was fast forward. And then they asked me, they said, John, when you see that theme, fast forward, what do you think? And I said, well, it's only two words. The word fast, when I think of fast, all I think of in the culture that we live in now is fast is faster than it's ever been before. Everything is, time is shrinking. I love people who say something like, I don't want to make that decision right now. I'm going to wait till things settle down, and I'm going to wait till they slow down and things kind of get normal again, and then I'll make that decision. I want to look at them and say, you're never going to make the decision. It's never going to slow down. It's never going to. You're never going to have that space that you just think you need to make that decision. Fast is faster than it's ever been before, and forward is shorter than it's ever been before. Again, when I started off 50 years ago, literally, now Mark, you're not as old as me, but you may remember this. I mean, there used to be a time where a company would have like a 10-year kind of long-range growth plan. Okay, here's what we're going to do for the next 10 years. And then you maybe had a 5-year mid-range plan. And a short-range plan, a long time ago was 2 years. I mean, oh my gosh, that's a short-range plan, 2 years. Now today, a short-range plan back then, of 2 years is a ridiculously long-range plan. Now somebody says, really? You can do a 2-year plan? And so forward is it's condensed. It's shorter. And because of that, because of where you are, because you're on the leading edge in automation and the things that you do, because of where you are, there are three shifts in leadership. I think in the book, there are 11 of them. But there are three that I want to talk to you about and let you apply them to your life and to where you are, and hopefully it'll be very helpful to you. The first shift I want to talk to you about is a personal shift. It's a personal growth shift, and that is that in my lifetime I have moved from being goal oriented to being growth oriented. Now, I started off my life being very goal oriented. In fact, when I was in my 20s, I had a mentor at breakfast one time ask me what my plan for growth was. I didn't have one. In fact, I didn't have any clue I was supposed to have one. And he said something to me that day that just changed my life. Isn't it interesting how somebody will say something to you, or you'll experience something and you'll look back at your life and you'll say, that was an important time for me. I think it was Steve Jobs says that as we look back on our life, we can connect the dots. As we look forward, we can't. But as I look back, that breakfast conversation at the Holiday Inn in Lancaster, Ohio with Kurt Kampmeyer, it was life-changing to me. He said, John, when he found out I didn't have a growth plan, he said, John, growth is not automatic. You don't automatically get better. Just because we go to work every day and do our job every day, that doesn't mean that we're really growing. It means that we're doing our job. But we have to keep learning more and expanding. And so he challenged me to develop a growth plan, of which I did. Now, when I say I developed a growth plan, I really didn't know what that would be like, and I'd never had any experience. And in fact, I went to dozens of my friends, and I asked them, do you have a growth plan? You know what's interesting? I went to dozens of my friends and asked them if they had a growth plan. And not one friend said yes. Yeah, I have a personal growth plan. Isn't that interesting? That's when I learned that almost all of us just kind of think that if we show up to work, we'll just automatically grow. But that breakfast changed my life. So I didn't know how to develop a growth plan, and so I found one. Paul Meyer of Success Motivation Institute out of Waco, Texas, had a goal-setting kit. And I never will forget because it was expensive. I mean, we're talking about 1973. I think it was like $795. And that was like a month's salary for me back then. And so Margaret and I, we didn't have credit cards. We just saved up for about 6 months until I could afford to get the personal growth plan. Now, here's what I want you to hear. So the first growth plan I ever had in my life was a how to set goals growth plan. And it helped me tremendously. In fact, I spent 2 years, it had cassettes, it had workbooks, it had practices. And I spent about 2 years really learning how to set goals and do all those things. And I can promise you, it helped me. It launched me. It was a specific growth plan to help me to grow, and I did. And then I heard Earl Nightingale. Say that if you would spend 1 hour a day every day for 5 years on the same subject, got it? 1 hour a day every day, same subject, 5 years. Earl Nightingale said that you could become an expert on that subject. And I was so passionate, even at that age, to learn how to be a good leader. I said, that's what I'm going to do. And so I literally spent an hour every day for 5 years on leadership. I practiced leadership. I talked to leaders. I asked questions. I read leadership books. I had leadership experiences. So what's interesting is, as I went through that process, Earl Nightingale said 5 years, so it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to become an expert on leadership in 5 years. And so, you got 4, you got 3. And I started to do like I was like Cape Canaveral doing a countdown. And then something, Mark, really happened. Just happened. I was doing all this leadership stuff, and right about in the middle of that 5-year span, I was getting better. I was doing leadership better. People were starting to follow me. I could tell that I was becoming a leader. Interestingly enough, the moment I could tell that there was a shift in me, personal growth, we're talking about the shift. The moment I could tell there was growth in me, I quit asking how long will it take. I quit being Cape Canaveral and doing a countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I started asking another question. And this is what I want. I hope I can do a good job right here for the next 30 seconds. This is what I want you to catch. I stopped asking how long it would take, and I started asking, how far can I go? Because all of a sudden I began to see the potential of personal growth. And because I spent 5 years on leadership, all of a sudden I realized that I should not be as goal-oriented as I was. And then what I should be, instead of being goal-oriented, is I should be growth-oriented. And that leadership experience that I had just absolutely made a difference in my life. Now, the reason I say that is we're talking about a shift now from setting goals. Okay, by this time I want to be at this position or title or place or have this much money or whatever it is. I went from being goal-focused to being growth-focused. And then I sat down and I realized that growth is a journey. It's not a destination. You see, when you think of goals, I run into people all the time that have goals, and I ask them the question, well, what happens is if they hit their goal, then they kind of look and say, now what do I do? And what I realized is the moment, goals basically say there's a destination to arrive. Growth basically says there's a journey to take. And I've been on this growth journey, for, oh my gosh, I've been on it for 50 years. I'm growing more today. I'm learning more today than I ever have before. And it's very exciting. But what happens is with goals, there's kind of like a finish line. But with growth, honestly, there's just not a finish line. So then I began to ask myself, and this is I never hear anybody teach about this, but I hope this really helps you. I then asked myself, what are the areas that I need to grow in that will help me be better? And I categorize them. For example, if I were you, I'd be asking myself, what are the areas I need to grow in to help my organization get better? Because I tell people all the time, if you want to grow your organization, it's very simple. You have to grow your people. Growing people grow organizations. Stagnant people have stagnant organizations. It's just the fact. So you just kind of need to say, okay, I need to look at myself and say, okay, what do I need to do to bring growth to my team, to the people that I work with right now? I know Mark's asked that question as the leader, and he continues to grow, and he wants more than anything else for every one of you to have that growth also. So what I did is I said there are 5 things I need to do to be really reaching my potential as a person. Now, the 5 things I have aren't going to be your 5 necessarily, but I'm just trying to teach and illustrate to you that if you'll make that shift from just setting goals in your life to being committed to grow in the main areas, in what I call the everyday essentials. What is it that is essential for me every day to do well, for me to be successful in life? And I came to the conclusion, for me, it was 5 things. Communication. I'm a communicator, obviously. Now, that may not be yours, but I said I've really got to learn how to communicate well. I need to learn how to lead well. I need to know how to equip people really well. I need to know how to build teams, etc. I need to have an incredible attitude, this kind of a can-do spirit that would overcome adversity. And I need to be really strong in relationships. I need to know how to really connect with people. So these 5 areas are the 5 areas in my personal growth area. Now, I've got to be honest with you. Just time out for a second. I'm a believer. I'm a person of faith, and so faith was in there also. But that's not what I'm here for you today. But I sat down and I said, these are the areas that I really want to develop and grow myself. And I committed myself to that, and it was life-changing. It was literally life-changing. People ask me all the time, they say, John, what is your greatest leadership challenge? And I always tell them, my greatest leadership challenge is leading me. It's not leading you. I mean, here I am. I'm doing a little teaching on leadership today, and I'm certainly grateful for this opportunity. But I'll teach you these principles, and then you'll finish your conference and you'll go on with your life, and I'll go on with my life. And it's easy to tell you what to do. It's much harder for me to do what to tell other people to do. In other words, it's like I said one time, if I had to, spank the person that has caused most of my problems, I wouldn't be able to sit down for a week, because I have to always deal with myself. And that's why I like this leadership from goals to growth, because it's a personal thing. I would challenge you. This would be great, Mark, if the people on your team would sit down and have a discussion on what do we need to grow in to really help our team, really do better. If we really want to grow ourselves to grow the organization, then what are the 2 or 3 things? And don't get a lot of stuff. Don't say I've got to grow in 13 areas. Nobody's going to do that. It's too much. In fact, when I did 5, I thought, wow, that's a lot. And I focused on some more than others at different times in my life. But I just want to really challenge you to make the shift. Make the shift from just setting goals at this time. I want to achieve this. I'm not anti-goals. I'm not. So understand. But what I am is I'm extremely pro-growth. Here's what I know. If you will take the essentials for success in your life, and you will say, I'm going to commit myself every day to growing in those areas, I will promise you, you will do very well in life. I promise that. In fact, when people ask me, as you look back at your life, again, I'm connecting the dots going backwards. What would you say is has been the secret of your success. I would say unquestionably. My commitment to intentionally grow every day. And remember, we have to be intentional in this because we don't grow automatically. Everything worthwhile is uphill. So it takes effort, it takes energy, it takes time. So when I made a commitment, when Kurt Kattmeyer at breakfast at the Holiday Inn in Lancaster, Ohio said, John, growth is not automatic. If you're going to grow, you have to be intentional. I believed him and I practiced that. And I can tell you for 50 years now, I am continually still doing it. Trust me, if you'll commit to personal growth, your family will benefit, you'll benefit, the company benefits, everybody benefits. Let me give you another shift that's in the book that I think is so essential for the success of you, your family, your incredible organization. Let's talk about the shift from maintaining to creating. This is what I call the abundance shift. And let me just say this. The natural thing for organizations to do is to maintain. That's why I teach people all the time, today's success is the biggest detriment you have to tomorrow's success, because the natural tendency is, let's find a good way to do this, and then let's just keep doing it this way. So, let's, oh my gosh, I think we got it. Okay, let's just hold on to it. This is good. And what we don't realize is that it's impossible to maintain and be successful. That's why Mark gave you a new product launch. It's because he sees a better future, but that better future is not just doing what you've done in the past. If I always do what I've always done, I'll always get what I've always gotten. Okay, so that isn't what you want to do. You've got to constantly be, seeing more than others see, and seeing before others see. So when you go from maintaining, kind of holding on to what you have and trying to, hug it to death, to creating, you enter into what I call the abundance world. And the abundance world is an incredible world to live in. Basically, people in this world live in one of two camps. They either are in an abundance world or they're in a scarcity world. And if they're in a scarcity world, they're constantly scared. They're frightened. They're concerned because they just basically say, all I got is this, and I got to hold on to this because I don't want to lose it. If I lose it, I'll have nothing. Where an abundance mindset says there's more out there. In fact, let me just say this. An abundance mindset says there's always an answer. So when I run into people, they say, well, I don't think there's an answer for that. I just smile and I say to them, you live in a scarcity world. There is an answer. There's always an answer. Now, I may not know the answer, but the very fact that I believe there is an answer keeps me in the game. I was being interviewed recently, and somebody asked me, I've written several books and I'm quite creative, and they say, give me the key to creativity. And I know they were looking for some kind of a creative answer, like, oh my gosh, creative people, they just think in other worlds and dreams come true, and kind of ethereal. And I'll never forget, I looked at them when they said, what's the secret to creativity? I said, the secret to creativity is to believe that there's always an answer. Because if I believe there's always an answer, I'm always searching for the answer. And let me just say, when you go from just believing there's always an answer to even what I call super creativity, see, when you're really creative, you not only believe that there's always an answer, so you're always digging and looking for the answer. You know what also you believe? You believe there's always a better answer. See, this is huge. If you could sit here in this studio right beside me, and you and I could just have a one-on-one conversation, my dear friend, I would share with you that everything I'm doing today, my writing, my speaking, my 7 companies, my transformation of nations around the world, if you would ask me, John, talk to me about what you're doing right now. The thing I think that I would say that would startle you is the fact that I believe that everything I'm doing right now, I think we're doing a pretty good job. But I think everything I'm doing right now could be improved. I believe every day brings an improvement opportunity to me. I believe that every person has an improvement idea for me. I believe that everything can be improved. Mark Cole, who's the CEO of the John Maxwell Enterprise, a few years ago, we were in the Middle East and I was doing some speaking. One night we're having a late dinner and he said to me, John, he said, I watch you. And you celebrate successes in our companies. I mean, nobody celebrates more than you. And you high five everybody and say thank you. And, we have a party or whatever we need to do with our success. And then he said, I watch you within 24 hours. You're right back to, let's go build a company. He said, it's just, he said, talk to me about this. He said, you don't celebrate long until you realize that you got to get back in the game. And that evening, we had a great conversation on the difference between best and better. You see, best is what I'm doing right now. I'm doing my best to do a good talk. I mean, Mark's a great friend, and I love him, and I admire your leadership, Mark, and what you do in your organization. So I'm doing my best for you today. In fact, I got up early this morning, and I looked at my notes, and and I tweaked some stuff, and how can I make it better for you? And so right now I'm delivering my best. I'm giving you 100%. I'm not giving you 50% and holding something back. I'm giving you it's my very best, but best is for now. Now, what do I mean by that? That'll mean tomorrow I expect, if I give this teaching again, to improve it. In fact, I won't settle for what I did yesterday. You see, best is for now. So I take my best and give it to you right now. That's what you deserve. But when tomorrow comes, best is no longer the ceiling. Best is the floor. And I'm saying, how can I get better? How can I do better on this talk? How can I help people more learn how to leadership in a better way? In other words, yesterday's best, which is my ceiling right now, is the floor tomorrow that I build on, because there's always a better answer. There's always a better way. I know that. I mean, I've been writing for a long time. And Mark talked to you about my books, and I don't know. I've written 88 books. I had a lady the other day tell me I'd written more books than she'd even read. And but by the way, don't get too impressed with that. Think about it. If you've written that many books, the one qualification you have to have is you have to be old. Okay, if you're young and you're not going to write that many books, you got to be an old person to write all those books. Okay, so that's not that big of a deal. But I remember I would probably had written about 70 books. And at that time, probably my books had sold, I don't know, maybe 25 million copies. And I have a wonderful friend that's been with me on my writing team for many years who I write, and then he kind of wordsmiths, et cetera. And I sat down with Charlie, and I said, Charlie, I think I'm in a rut. And I'm writing, and it's, the books are really selling well, but I think I need to improve. I need to learn another way to write that can make me even a better author than I am today. And I remember Charlie looking at me and saying, John, don't mess with success. Good Lord, look how well everything's going. I said, no, you always mess with success. I can tell you that every organization, every person ought to have a success autopsy every once in a while. You just need to look at that, cut that sucker up and say, this is not good enough. It just isn't good enough. So I found a lady named Laura Morton, and her way of helping somebody write was different than mine. The way I write is literally, and by this true, I have a 4-color pen and a legal pad, and I literally write my books out. I kind of think and write. And Laura said, let's do a different kind of writing. Let's talk and write. And she sat me down one morning for 3 hours and turned on the tape recorder and started asking me questions. And I was answering their questions. She never took her eyes off of me. The tape recorder kept on playing. She just kept on asking questions. I just was talking the book. I was talking the book out. And that evening she would go and she would get it all typed up, everything that was said, and she would begin to form it. And make the long story short, my book, Intentional Living, that was the book we did it on. I talked that book into existence. And it was a different way to writing. When I was talking, I was much more emotional than when I was thinking and writing on the legal pad. And I learned a new way to write. And now I talk my way into writing. I still think my way into writing. I had a whole new dimension. Now, here's what I don't want you to miss. She improved me. I got better. Why did I get better? Because there's always a better way. There's always a better answer. I never assume anything in my life. Never do I assume that I've nailed it and I've got it down. I always assume that how I'm doing it, it's my best. I'm giving it my best shot. But I never, ever assume, never, that I've nailed it. And so I'm always asking questions, and I'm always seeking out answers, and I'm always saying, no matter what we're doing, we can do better. I have a coaching company that's the largest coaching company in the world. We have 42,000 coaches in 172 countries of the world. And we've only been in existence a little bit over 10 years, and people ask me, how did you become so successful with the coaching company? And I tell them, we have a process. We have what we call a cycle of success, and this just really works. And the cycle of success is very simple. And by the way, it's a cycle, so we keep repeating it. I mean, there are 5 things that we do, and this isn't a journey to success. If it's a journey, honestly, we can pass something and never come back. But when it's a cycle, there's repetition, but repetition with growth. Let me explain to you. The cycle's five stages. First stage is testing. We're always testing. Why? Because that's the only way that you can discover something new. So you have to get out on the edge. You have to go where you haven't gone before. You have to do what you haven't done before so that you can learn what you've never known before. So we're always testing, and so because we test so much, guess what comes with testing a lot of times is failure. It just does. Why do you have so much failure when you have so much testing? It's because you haven't done it before. Yeah. So if you test 10 things in a year, you're going to have maybe a half a dozen failures. But, if you test 100 things, you could have 500 or 600 failures. So, there's a relationship on how much I test and how much I fail. But that's okay. It's okay. Because the reason that out of our failure, the fruit of failure is what did you learn from it? What did you learn? So when people talk about their failures in life, okay, I'll listen to your failure, but as soon as you're done, I've got a question for you. What did you learn? What did you learn? And if you did learn something, you go to the 4th stage of the cycle. So we test, we fail, we learn, and that's improvement. We improve. We just don't learn to have head knowledge. We improve to practice, to get better. How do you develop leaders? Practice leadership. So we've learned something. So now we practice something differently because of what we have learned. So we test, we fail, we learn, improve. And then the last stage of that cycle is then we re-enter. We get back into the game. But as soon as we're back in the game, we're back on the cycle. We again test, fail, learn, improve, test, fail. But watch me visually just for a second. We test, fail, learn, improve, and then we re-enter. And then we test, fail, learn, improve, and then we re-enter. And then we test, fail, learn, improve, and we re-enter. We test, fail, learn, improve, and we re-enter. Now you see what's happening. As we do the cycles, we're not repeating the same thing and getting the same results. We're repeating the steps because they're essential to success and they're essential to learning and growing. But every time we repeat those steps, we've upped ourselves. We've kind of gotten to a new level, and that's absolutely huge. It's huge in my life. It's huge in your life. This one's the most life-changing in my life. It may not be in yours, but in mine it is. And that's the shift from directing to connecting. This is what I call the communication shift. And when I'm directing you as a leader, and this is what I did as a young leader all the time. I was a directional visionary leader. I'd basically say, you need to know what I want you to do. You need to know what I know. So, excuse me. So I was always pointing into the hill and direction, say, let's charge that hill. That's a directing leader. A directing leader basically says, you need to know what I want you to do. But a connecting leader just really flips that. Instead of saying, you need to know what I want you to do, I look and I say, I need to know what you want. Wow, that's just totally different. And you say, John, how did you make that shift? I made that shift because I began to understand that I was leading by assumption. You see, you have to find your people before you can lead them. And so many times as a young leader, I wasn't finding my people at all. I was telling them what I wanted them to do. And I was never asking any questions. And what I was doing is I was leading by assumption. And that's, for a leader, that's horrible. Assumptions are that's the mother of all mess ups in leadership. When I assume that I know where you are on the team and what you're thinking, I'm already in trouble. I have to find you. And how do I find you? By asking questions. I have to find you, then I can lead you really well. I was being interviewed in New York a couple years ago when I was on a book tour, and the reporter asked me, he said, John, what's the greatest change you've ever made in your leadership? I said, well, the greatest change is when I was a young leader, I was giving directions. Here's what I want you to do. Here's where I want you to go, take off. And I said, I went from a directing leader to a connecting leader. And so now, instead of giving directions quickly, I ask questions quickly. Why? Because I want to find you. I want to find out exactly where you are. I want to create common ground. I had a wonderful friend in the sports world, Pat Summitt. She was the basketball coach for the University of Tennessee Lady Volunteers. And in her world, in women's basketball at the time, she was on the same level as John Wooden was in men's college basketball. Great leader she was, a great coach. So she used my books with her team all the time, and we would talk. She would call me up, and she would ask leadership questions, and I mentored her. And I never will forget one of our conversations. We talked about assumptions. What happened is I went up to be with her when her team was playing a basketball game, and at halftime I went into the locker room, and the girls. The college ladies, they set up, they had about a dozen chairs right up with a big marker board. And the coaches, they went out of the room, so I just sat in the back of the room where the players were. And one of the players went up to the marker board, and there were 3 columns. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? What do we need to change? And this fellow basketball player looked at her teammates and said, okay, let's talk about what did we do right the first half? And they listed some things they did really well. What did we do wrong? Okay, they listed some things. And then she went over to the change. What do we need to change column? And these girls started talking about the changes they need to make in the second half to win this game. And that exercise, it didn't last long, 5 or 6 minutes. And they were used to it. I could tell they do this exercise all the time. Here comes Pat Summitt in the room, goes up to the board, looks at the 3 columns, makes 2 or 3 comments, sends the team back out on the floor. They win the game. Now Pat and I are having a late dinner. And I said, you got to talk to me about the halftime and what do we do right? What do we do wrong? What do we need to change? And here's what she said. She said, as a leader, as a young coach, she said, I wasn't successful for the first 2 years. I could tell I wasn't going to be a great coach. My team, they weren't winning. And she said, I kept asking myself, what am I doing wrong? And at almost the end of the second year of her coaching, she said, John, I came to the conclusion that I was leading by assumption. That basically I was assuming that my girls on my team, they knew certain basketball basics. And so therefore she said, because I assumed I was coaching them from my thoughts and my perspective, not theirs. And I was missing them. And she said, I determined in that second year that I would find the girls first and find out where they are. And then I would coach them from where they are to where they need to go. That was a life-changing conversation with me because I thought to myself, and that's where I started making that shift. I said, I need to start making that shift. I need to, instead of assuming that my team knows these things, I just kind of need to ask questions and find out where they are. And then when I find them, then I can lead them.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.